I never imagined I'd see the day my husband would sit across from me in a courtroom, smirking like he'd already won everything I had. But there he was, Daniel Hart, 42, the man I had loved for 10 years, laughing as if our marriage and my family's fortune were nothing more than a joke. And the words that left his mouth made my blood run cold. "I'm taking half of everything, including her family money. Half. Everything. My grandmother's estate, the trust set up by generations, the savings I'd worked to protect, it was all suddenly up for grabs. Could you imagine being in my shoes, knowing the person you trusted most is ready to walk away with everything you hold dear?" I couldn't breathe for a moment. The courtroom went dead silent. Every eye was on me, waiting to see what I would do. And I had already decided. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Walking into that courtroom, I felt the weight of the moment like a physical presence pressing against my chest. I was 38, the heiress of a family fortune, but it wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, about proving that arrogance and entitlement could not crush me. I remembered the way Daniel had changed over the last few years, how his casual charm slowly became cold calculation, how small betrayals had built into something much larger. And yet, he had no idea that I had been preparing for this moment longer than he realized. The judge, Charles Whitman, 56, a man known for his composure and dry sense of humor, raised an eyebrow at Daniel's bold statement. The tension was almost unbearable. I gripped the envelope hidden in my purse tighter, feeling the edges dig into my hand. What I had in that envelope was more than just papers. It was months of careful planning, legal strategy, and proof that would turn the tables in ways Daniel could never anticipate. And as I stood up, ready to hand the judge that envelope, a question formed in my mind, and maybe in yours too. How do you fight someone who has been counting on your fear, your hesitation, and your trust? I was about to show him, and the entire courtroom, that the difference between losing and winning often comes down to preparation and nerve. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and handed the envelope across the bench. "Please read page 3, I said calmly, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel laughed. The kind of laugh that makes you want to scream. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. I never thought I would see the man I married transform into someone so brazen, so unapologetically greedy. Daniel Hart, 42, had always been ambitious, but ambition was one thing, entitlement was another. And today, sitting across from me in that courtroom, he made it painfully clear that he had decided to claim what he wanted, no matter the consequences. The way he leaned back in his chair, a smug smirk plastered on his face, made my stomach twist with anger. He wasn't just taking half of our assets, he was laughing at the idea, daring me to do anything about it. Could you imagine being in that position? Watching someone you trusted treat your life like a game? As I looked at him, flashes of our past danced in my mind. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of loyalty, 10 years of trusting him with my heart and my fortune. I remembered the late nights we spent building our life, the vacations where we dreamed together, the quiet mornings when I believed we were partners in everything. And now, in one fell swoop, he wanted to erase all of that. I felt a wave of betrayal so intense it almost knocked me off my feet. But I couldn't let him see that. I had to stay calm, collected. I glanced around the courtroom. The air was thick with tension. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers were watching, wondering how this would unfold. Daniel's lawyer nodded confidently at him, as if the courtroom were already his playground. And yet, I held my secret close. The envelope in my purse wasn't just paper, it was months of careful planning, of documenting every loophole, every clause, every legal safeguard that could protect me from someone like him. It was my weapon, and he had no idea. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. "You really think that envelope can save you?" he said, his tone dripping with condescension. I almost smiled. Almost. Because I knew that in a few moments, everything he thought he had won would unravel. I had rehearsed every word, every pause, every step of this confrontation. This wasn't just a legal battle, it was a test of nerve, of strategy, and of endurance. I took a steadying breath. "It's not about what I think," I replied evenly. "It's about what the law says. And what you don't know will change your entire day." The courtroom leaned in. Daniel's smirk faltered slightly. He didn't expect resistance. He didn't expect preparation. And in that split second, I realized that victory wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. But as I reached into my purse, feeling the envelope against my fingers, I knew the most dramatic moment was yet to come. Because what Daniel didn't know, what no one expected, was that this envelope contained more than just legal documents. And what came next would leave the entire courtroom stunned. The moment I placed the envelope on the judge's bench, the room seemed to hold its breath. Every eye followed my hand, every whisper faded into silence. I could feel Daniel's gaze burning into me, a mix of curiosity and disbelief. He thought he had seen every side of me, every weakness, every hesitation. But he had never seen this. And he had no idea what I had been preparing for months. Can you imagine that kind of anticipation? Knowing that one simple act could completely turn the tables? I could feel the tension like a living thing, wrapping around my chest and tightening with every second. Judge Charles Whitman, 56, adjusted his glasses and peered down at the envelope. He opened it carefully, as if touching it incorrectly might release some hidden trap. Inside were neatly organized documents, legal affidavits, and court filings, enough to make any experienced lawyer pause. But I wasn't done. Page 3, the page I had highlighted and marked with a small golden tab, was the key. I could see the curiosity in the judge's eyes as he scanned the first 2 pages, and I knew Daniel's confidence was starting to waver. "Please read page 3, I said again, my voice calm, steady, and deliberately slow. Daniel laughed at first, a nervous, scoffing sound. "You really think a few papers can change anything," he said. But the laugh faded when the judge's eyes lingered on that page. Something shifted in the room. The murmurs grew louder. The lawyer next to Daniel leaned forward, squinting at the documents as if trying to spot a trick that wasn't there. And I sat there, heart steady, adrenaline humming, watching Daniel's smirk slowly crack. Inside that envelope was more than just legal language. It was leverage, proof, and a carefully crafted loophole that would protect my family's inheritance from anyone foolish enough to claim it. It was months of meticulous planning, every scenario anticipated, every contingency covered. And Daniel, for all his arrogance, hadn't considered a single one. Could you imagine being so blind in your own greed that you didn't see the trap right in front of you? The judge cleared his throat and paused dramatically, as if savoring the tension. Then, finally, he read the line out loud. And, just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Daniel's eyes widened, his confidence slipping like sand through his fingers. He leaned back, unsure of what to say. I smiled faintly, a quiet thrill of satisfaction coursing through me. The room was still tense, still waiting. And yet, something told me that the moment of true revelation, the one that would leave everyone gasping, was about to arrive. The judge looked up from the envelope, and for a moment, the entire courtroom seemed to pause. Daniel's confident smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty that made my pulse quicken with anticipation. Judge Charles Whitman, 56, cleared his throat and read the line on page 3 aloud. If any claim is made against the family inheritance that is not authorized by the trust's original conditions, it will be considered null and void, and full control remains with the rightful heir. The words hung in the air, heavy with impact. Daniel's jaw tightened, and I could see the shock ripple across his face like a physical blow. The courtroom erupted not in chaos, but in stunned murmurs and suppressed gasps. Daniel's lawyer fumbled with papers, trying to find some loophole, some argument to save face. But the page I had highlighted, the envelope I had prepared so meticulously, left him with nothing. And the best part? Daniel had laughed at me when I handed it over. He had mocked the very thing that would undo his plans. Could you imagine that moment, the smugness draining from someone's face as they realize their arrogance has blinded them completely? I savored it in silence, letting the tension stretch, knowing that the payoff was building. Judge Whitman's laughter cut through the silence, unexpected and loud, and I felt a thrill run down my spine. Mr. Hart, he said, looking directly at Daniel, I suggest you rethink your strategy. The words hit harder than any argument. Daniel's eyes darted around the courtroom, disbelief etched into every line of his face. He had believed that confidence and intimidation would carry him through. He had underestimated not just me, but the law, preparation, and the patience of someone who refused to be outmaneuvered. I sat back, letting the moment wash over me. The irony was delicious. Daniel had thought he could claim everything, including my family fortune, with a casual laugh and a smirk. Instead, he was humiliated, exposed, and powerless in front of every person present. And yet, there was more to the story than just this courtroom victory. That envelope, page 3, the entire strategy, it was only the first step. Daniel had no idea the full extent of the plan I had quietly prepared, and I intended to keep it that way. The room buzzed with whispers and disbelief, and I felt a quiet satisfaction settle in my chest. But as the judge adjusted his glasses and glanced at me with a small, approving nod, I knew this wasn't just about winning. It was about sending a message. About patience, strategy, and never underestimating someone you think you can control. The courtroom was silent for a moment, and then the gavel came down. Judge Charles Whitman's voice was calm, but firm. The claims against the family inheritance are denied. Full control remains with the rightful heir, Miss Hart. Relief, satisfaction, and a quiet triumph washed over me, but more than anything, I felt a surge of vindication. Daniel's face had turned pale, and the arrogance that had defined him for so long was completely gone. He slumped back in his chair, defeated, powerless, and fully exposed in front of everyone. I sat quietly, letting the moment sink in, feeling the weight of 10 years of betrayal lift from my shoulders. I looked around the courtroom, and for a second, the world seemed to hold its breath. Friends and strangers alike were staring, some with admiration, some with shock. And then I realized. The envelope, page 3, the careful preparation I had undertaken, had not just won me the fortune. It had won back my dignity, my sense of control, and my peace of mind. The lesson was clear: patience, strategy, and understanding your own power can turn even the direst situations into victories. Daniel, 42, my former husband, now understood in the harshest possible way that arrogance and entitlement can blind you. He had believed confidence alone would carry him to success, but he had underestimated me, underestimated the law, and underestimated the patience of someone who refused to be outmaneuvered. And in that moment, I felt a quiet, almost cinematic satisfaction. Victory had never felt sweeter. But even as the judge finalized the ruling, I knew this was only the first chapter of reclaiming my life. That envelope, carefully prepared, had been the key to turning the tables. Yet the full scope of my strategy, what I had planned in secret over months, was something Daniel would never see coming. And perhaps, in a way, that was the final, lingering satisfaction, knowing that someone who had tried to take everything from me would never anticipate the depth of my foresight. I rose from my seat, glancing one last time at Daniel. Trust can be betrayed, I thought, but preparation and patience make you untouchable. And as I walked out of that courtroom, I knew that the story wasn't just about money, revenge, or legal strategy. It was about power, resilience, and reclaiming what is yours, no matter how impossible it may seem. So here's my question to you. If someone tried to take everything you held dear, what would you do? Could you stay calm? Could you plan patiently and strike at the perfect moment? Remember this story, because sometimes the difference between being a victim and being victorious is simply knowing your own strength and never underestimating yourself.